Welcome to the full book review of Benjamin Franklin's The Autobiography and Other Writers, whereas the summary I used a somewhat British Australian accent, mainly because I watched those shows too much. This time I'll be doing the American accent for Benjamin Franklin. Now, Benjamin Franklin himself is one of the most founding fathers of America, and what you're going to see in this autobiography is his representation of his own life, or at least as much as he could have written while he was alive. He didn't get to finish it. In fact, he didn't even get halfway through his life, or at least halfway through the important parts of his life. He did talk about his little experiences since he was young, creating, inventing things, those things that you typically find in autobiographies, but the important things about his own thoughts on the revolution, what he went ahead and wanted people to think of, that was excluded from the autobiography for mentions I already reasoned, and can be represented by a skull, and possibly crossbones. What are my thoughts on this? Well, it fairly is an accurate representation of Benjamin Franklin's own life, and you would have to admit that, because this is literally his own life. He wrote about his own life. Who doesn't know your life better than your own life? Your mother. I can't argue with that. They definitely know you since you're born, because 1 to 3-year-old memories are all deleted from your brain the moment you turn like 5 years old, 6 years old. You probably get feelings about what you did when you were a toddler. Like, I still have feelings of like running around in a ballpark and looking at sky when I was young. So certainly something could have popped up, but that's not the point here. The point here is Benjamin Franklin kinda lies a lot inside this book. Sure, he does a lot of useful information. He gives a lot of useful information, such as the 13 virtues that you should do if you want perfectionism, and then proceeds to tell you that you can't actually do this, and so don't even try. I see this as a lame excuse for not trying. Very typical of us students nowadays, aren't we? We procrastinate a lot, and somehow we still make sure we pass exams and maybe even exceed them. One of those being the schedule that we got from his book. His 5 to 6, 7... 6, waking up and going ahead and doing his morning stuff, including praying to God, his 8, 9, 10, 11 work hour, and then 2-hour lunch break, and 2, 3, 4, 5 work break. Among other things, such as going ahead and talking about how he rests, and then goes ahead and sleeps for about 7 hours. And the book itself is a mess. In fact, it isn't even basically a book. It's barely readable at all. Some of the spellings are a little bit incorrect. At least maybe that is how they spelled English in the olden days, but by modern standards, or probably older standards too, that might have raised a few eyebrows. Some of the spellings are still kept, like and C is actually etc. apparently. And he even capitalized some places a little bit awkwardly. Maybe modern translations would go ahead and tend this towards like a lowercase c, but this edition tried to be as fairly accurate towards the original version too, so they kept the capitalizations to where he even did them. They try to be as accurate as possible. That's pretty respectful about them. But one thing I will mention, other than the unevenness and the good advice that he went ahead and gave in his autobiography, is that he went ahead and like shrouded some parts of his life into a little bit of a hazy mystery, so that you don't really know what he's talking about, or it not even exists that he even did this. And if it wasn't for the fact that he had all these essays all written out, then you probably didn't even know that these parts even existed. But all the parts before that were all more likely that are not mentioned here are either just made up, trying to be glorifying, as all great political figures and actions and advisors do, or maybe he just wanted to go ahead and shot some privacy into his life. If it wasn't for his essays and other letters that we have access to, mostly because he has very thorough kind of records of everything, as a result, we go ahead and get to know every part of Benjamin Franklin himself. If we only did rely on his autobiography, then we have no idea what he did during the Revolution, too, mainly because he died before he can write anything about the American Revolution. Like, as anything, I mean what happened during the American Revolution, not the preceding towards it. All we get about the preceding is that he wrote some documents, he passed some legislation, and then went to London to try to negotiate, and later he didn't talk about France at all, come to think of it. He just talked about going to Europe, and he talked about his son being more or less like, hey, I love the British more, I'd like to stay in Britain, mate. And with that in mind, we get to go ahead and talk about the other autobiographies. He never probably intended for all those essays and letters to go ahead and get into the public, but he definitely went ahead and made sure that they were released, because for some reason his printers who published his material all had access to them. Nowadays, we do have all the materials inside this book. The other writings part is that, but I won't mention most of that here. All I'm going to talk about here is that all the achievements that he did, we all know because of other secondary sources or primary sources that he wrote himself, not the autobiography. As mentioned earlier, the autobiography itself it's not exactly shoddy work. He himself has definitely planned this. In fact, there's a page right after the autobiography where we go ahead and see Franklin's own notes and his own outline of his autobiography. Here is his. I'll read an excerpt of it. My writing. Mrs. Duguid's letters differences arise between my brother and me. His temper and mine, their cause in general, his newspaper, the prosecution he suffered, my examination, vote of assembly, his manner evading it, whereby I became free, my attempt to get employed with other printers. Yeah, you can already see where this is going. We can see that Franklin himself has outlined every part of his essay, mostly because he even mentions parts that he hasn't even had the time to write in this book at all, too, which is probably one of the few reasons why this was included inside this. Like in the ending, he talks about like Mad Victoria, Miss Langdon, Doug Channers, Boygrant, Leroy, Dalibard, Nolet, see journals, Holland, reprint my papers and add many books presented to me from many authors, my book translated to French, Lightning Kite, various discoveries, my manner of prosecuting that study, King of Denmark invites me to dinner, recollect my father's proverbs, stand back, my opposition to it, and such and such and so on. He even talks about the French treaty. Unfortunately, he has never ever actually written anything about this, but we do know that he's considered writing about it. Probably part 5 or part 6, and this autobiography might have actually been good. Part 3 and part 4, the ending parts of the autobiography, are actually the most disinteresting part about the autobiography, mostly because it is about stuff that we modern people do not really care about. We don't really care about the little insides and the inner workings and the systems of, like, say, the French and the English and the Americans, but it certainly does prove that Benjamin Franklin himself is a skilled diplomat, and this is how he's went ahead and survived everything that came his way and became probably this kind, nice, maybe somewhat lustrous gentleman who only has officially 2 years of elementary school level education, but then again, back then grammar school was the equivalent of college, and people were literally at least 10 years old when they went to grammar school. So is it surprising that we humans are actually going dumber? Is it surprising that our brains are shrinking? No, I probably wouldn't do that. And what do we blame? Who do we blame, kids? Well, we all blame our phones, our digital devices. So right after you finish watching this video, never watch another video again and smash the like button. And throw away your iPad. But all jokes aside, seriously, we humans are getting dumber. But that's more of a side note than an actual part of the autobiography. Does this have any effect on Benjamin Franklin? So yes, it certainly did have a very big effect. The autobiography itself is very misleading. Sure, it does a lot of facts and gives a lot of accurate accounts of what Franklin did, but it just omits a lot of things about Franklin's life. Like, it omits the fact that he actually got inspiration for creating the so-called inventing Franklin stove and the bifocals, mostly because other people had already invented them and he just saw them and realized that Americans had no idea what this is and just took the claim that he created them. Of course, he never actually filed any patents for these. His reason in the book is because I want to go ahead and give the public some benefits without going ahead and having any profit from this at all. When in reality, if he actually did file a patent, then he would definitely be sued the hell out of. And who loves to be sued? Nobody. What ends up being the end result and the effect of Benjamin Franklin and his autobiography is the fact that it made him a glorifying man, and that's not going to change at all. Since the beginnings of America, and I'm serious here, literally the beginnings, the like the conception of the Americans, you could go ahead and see everything that Benjamin Franklin himself is considering. It's that Benjamin Franklin's name is on literally everything. Nowadays, Americans go ahead and name their kids after them. They have schools, businesses, institutions, public libraries, firefighting departments that are named after him. The Franklin Institute is one such example here. If you ever hear a guy named Benjamin, it's probably because he's an American. If he's not American, well then it's just because the name sounds cool. These essays that he wrote and letters that he wrote that are revealed to the public nowadays don't really have a big impact because people don't bother reading books as much as they do back then. Mostly because there are things called videos and movies and other entertaining stuff and non-fiction things that you could learn and probably absorb information better from. But you should still go ahead and read the autobiography someday or another. I recommend this version because it also gives you the other essays that are included inside it, which goes ahead and gives a deeper insight into Benjamin Franklin's life and the true man that he really was. So, what's the end result here? What's my thoughts about this? Benjamin Franklin himself, it certainly doesn't affect any of his image. In fact, if anything, it makes his image look even cooler and look more like the American that he is. Sad, but not least, that he never got to finish his autobiography. As this image goes ahead and shows, while he was in France, he could woo literally all of the ladies. So, mostly of them were old. The essays have no impact on him. Nobody even bothers to read them as much as, like, the olden days people did, but in the end, Benjamin Franklin himself has immortalized his name into all the textbooks that exist. If you open a world history textbook or an American history textbook, and probably even a European history textbook, you're probably going to get a mention of some guy named Benjamin. Even if in the European history, it's going to be a little bit more like a cameo than a full-out story. American Revolution, in the American history, you're definitely going to see him in the first few pages and then never again for the next part. But you will have to go ahead and use him in, say, your AP US history kinds of essays and things. I, myself, have done that in mock tests. Why should you read this? If you're an American, this is definitely one of the few things that you have to read. In fact, Common Sense and other classics, such as the Declaration of Independence, if you could somehow read the handwriting on that thing, that is. Nobody writes in that handwriting anymore. That would go ahead and make you one of the most culturally educated people in America ever. If you're not American, then you should still read this, because this guy is one of the most influential people has ever existed. A polymath, will you? Well, he's a writer, he's a scientist, he's an inventor, he's a statesman, he's a diplomat, he's a printer, he's a publisher, he's a political philosopher, and also the most influential intellectuals of his time. This part is why you should read it. So, what are you waiting for? Go ahead, read it. And while you're at it, read his essays. I hope to see you guys soon, and so until next time, Shihon out, peace, bye-bye.